There were many strange and awkward weapons developed during World War II. Both the Axis and Allied side experimented with ideas, some of which might seem crazy to us today. One of these was a project which aimed to use live pigeons to control glide bombs to the targets. This was Project Pigeon, or as it was later called, Project ORCON. So let's see the history of this development today. To understand the history of this experiment, first we will have to take a look at why and how these weapons were developed, and what led to the idea of using pigeons in weapons. As in many fields of technology, the Second World War drove the development behind the so-called smart bombs and their different guiding systems, and each new development became more sophisticated than its predecessors. The conventional bombs of World War II were very inaccurate. Early in the war, it was estimated that only 20% of the bombs dropped landed within 1,000 feet of the target, and this figure only improved to about 50% by the end of the war. This was especially true when the aircraft attacked moving targets, like ships and submarines. The development of dive bombers and their tactics helped to improve the accuracy, but these aircraft were not suitable for all types of missions. This led to the development of many advanced guided weapons during the war. The most well-known are maybe the German ones, like the V1 and V2 rockets, or the Fritz X and HS-293 glide bombs, some of which I have covered in my earlier videos. But though these are the most well-known ones, the Allied side also experimented with several different guided weapons and guiding systems over the years. The development of such weapons became even more urgent as the German submarines started attacking every Allied ship on the Atlantic, resulting in enormous losses in men and material. Destroying a submarine was not an easy task. The German U-boats rarely surfaced during daytime, and if they spotted the approaching patrol planes, they immediately started to dive. And though the Allied maritime patrol planes became more sophisticated and more effective over time, the accuracy of the conventional bombs, or rather the lack of, was a big drawback. So in early 1942, a program was started to develop guided bombs against this threat. The new weapons development was a joint project between the Bureau of Ordnance and the National Bureau of Standards, with the participation of several corporations and scientific institutes, such as Bell Telephone Laboratories, Western Electric, and MIT. The work on the new weapons body and guidance system started soon. The Bureau of Ordnance coordinated the work on different guiding systems, while NBS was responsible for the development of the airframe. This project was the so-called SWOD program. Though the design went through several different variations, the development of the so-called Pelican airframe was still fairly straightforward. The harder nut to crack was of course the guiding system. During the course of the program, several different options were tested for the weapons, starting with the most basic radio-controlled visual guidance, just like on the German HS-293 bombs. Then visual guidance, but with a television camera installed in the nose of the bombs. And finally, of course, passive and active radar guidance. If you would like to know more about the different variants of these bombs and their development process, check out my video about the history and development of the so-called bat bomb. But now back to the topic of how did pigeons end up in a bomb. Though the early radio and radar-controlled bombs were much more accurate than the conventional ones, but they were still fairly easy to jam, and the radar guidance often got confused and lost its target. During this time, an experiment suggested by behaviorist B.F. Skinner attempted to solve this problem by putting pigeons in the bombs, trained to peck on a screen in front of them showing the target, and thus control the weapon. But the army was skeptical, and understandably so. The idea sounds crazy at first. During 1941 and 1942, Skinner applied for government funding for his project, but he was rejected every time, and it seemed this will be the end of his experiments. But as many things in the history of this project, the saving grace was also something unexpected. The cereal company General Mills gave the help to Skinner he needed, in the form of $5,000 and a place to conduct his experiments. All thanks to Arthur D. Hyde, the vice president of research at the company, who saw an opportunity in Skinner's work. So the project continued on the top floor of a flour mill in Minneapolis. During the training of pigeons, using seeds as reward, they learned how to peck on a moving target on a screen. And by extending the time between pecking and feeding, Skinner managed to train them to peck rapidly at the image. Apparently, the system worked very well, and the pigeons were able to fulfill their task even when different audio and visual distractions were applied. After an observer was sent from OSRD to report on their work, Skinner and his colleagues were given the opportunity to present their experiment in Washington in February 1943. Their presentation was a success, and the OSRD awarded $25,000 to them and a contract to fully develop a homing control device using the pigeons. Skinner and his team, with the help of engineers at General Mills, went to work to develop a fully functioning control device. A harness was developed to hold the pigeons in place, and the first iteration of the system used pneumatic valves installed on the four edges of the screens. And as the pigeon pegged on the target, air was released, sending signals to the control surfaces. A nose cone for the Pelican glide bomb was developed, housing 3-liter screens and 3 pigeons to control it. Skinner developed the system where the controls followed the majority of input signals, so the bomb was aimed at the target, which was pegged on by at least 2 pigeons. The General Mills engineers built several simulators for the birds, where they were trained and tested with pre-recorded combat films. By December 1943, another demonstration was held with their simulator, and though the pigeons steered the simulated bomb to the target successfully, the observers raised questions about the data collected, especially about the control impulses to steer the bombs. In all honesty, the data discrepancies were not Skinner's or his team's fault. They could only guess about the bombs their pigeons would be steering, as the glide bomb was top secret, almost at the same level as the Manhattan Project. The team was given another chance to present their data to the top scientists working on homing systems at the time, and though their system worked during the demonstration, but the idea was so unusual, the officials were hesitant. Some also pointed out that even though the pigeons were accurate, and unlike the radio or radar guidance, they were immune to jamming, the system couldn't fix one of the greatest drawbacks of the visual control. It could only be used during daytime and in good weather, not at night or in cloud or smoke. In the end, this highly unusual project was cancelled in October 1944. In the words of the OSRD officials, further prosecution of this project would seriously delay others, which in the minds of the division have more immediate promise of combat application. The project was revived in 1948 by the Navy, under the name Project ORCON. With the lead of Franklin V. Taylor, the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington experimented with the pigeons and a more advanced version of Skinner's guiding system. They used a conductive screen and fixed gold electrodes on the beak of the birds for more accurate control. They spent almost 5 years experimenting, but eventually, with the appearance of more advanced electronic guidance systems, the project was shut down for good in 1953. Though Skinner's experiment was a very unique and apparently working idea at the time during World War II, but it was too unorthodox to be used in combat situations, and later the more advanced electronic guidance systems made it obsolete. But the pigeon-controlled glide bombs are still one of the most interesting ideas of military developments. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.